Good afternoon and welcome back to today's task. On today's task, I'm going to be installing a Warren 3,500 pound winch on my ATV. I've had this four-wheeler for nearly 6 years and it has only failed me on a few times, and one of those is in my winch. This is currently my third winch that I've replaced, and it is a no-name brand that I'm not going to mention by name. They are cheaper in price for a reason. They are not reliable back in the woods when you are desolate and alone by yourself and need help getting out. So cheap no-name brand winches, you failed me for the last time. It's time to put a name brand in. Now I will give you this. These winches are about 60 bucks a piece. That's pretty cheap. And even with purchasing another one at $60 a piece, I have not paid for the new Warren winch. That is a disclaimer. Warren is an expensive brand company when it comes to winches, but they're reliable and they're expensive for a reason. Their gearing's better, their electrical's better, everything's a better built. It's not meant to be a disposable tool like these are. First things first, when you're working with anything electrical, which your winch is, you need to disconnect the battery because this will have constant power coming to it. You've got to get below the seat. We need to disconnect power so that we don't get shocked, but we also need to disconnect power because we're going to replace the entire wiring harness for the winch, which comes back and directly bolts in to our battery. You will definitely want to keep track of all of these little bolts. They get away from you and then they get lost in the frame of the four-wheeler and you'll never find them again. Now we're into our winch. I want to show you guys a really cool thing that Polaris does. I don't know if all manufacturers of four-wheelers do this, but Polaris does. These come from the factory. These are actually leads that lead back to the battery, and they happen to be blue and yellow. These leads that they want to come from the battery and the main solenoid are blue and yellow. And nicely buttoned up is the end of those leads right here. How convenient is that? That's such a nice thing that I don't have to take all of the plastic apart on the four-wheeler and run those leads all the way up. They are the exact same gauge, they're the exact same wires, it's already done for me. That's such a nice thing. So now the old winch is out. I've got the winch mounting bracket out so that I can put the new winch into it and bolt it on and then bolt it back into its location. When it's attached to the four-wheeler, it limits all of your mobility. So I recommend just unbolting it and sliding in your new winch. Make sure you're double checking one thing. When this is mounted in place, the winch roll needs to be coming from underneath. If it's coming from over top, manufacturers all recommend that that's losing torque or not proper, so you want it to be pulling from underneath. One thing that's very apparent is that Warren has built their winches to mount up to the mounting hardware so much more simple. The other brands that were significantly cheaper, I had to do a lot of modifications on. I know that this can put down some real torque, but I don't quite trust it because if the batteries are not full on your impact wrenches, you're never going to get the full amount of torque. So get out your socket wrench and just double check them. Make sure they're good and tight. That feels and looks great. I don't know if all four-wheeler manufacturers do this, but Polaris has brackets built in on both sides of the main part of the frame that the winch mount will bolt directly into. It's really convenient and it's nice. It's one of those things that you just move around till you feel it. Now that all the bolts are in, go ahead and tighten them up. And definitely take a wrench to these and give them one last tighten. Now the winch is fully mounted. All we have to do is hook up the different leads and then bolt everything back up here. Then we'll work our electrical all the way back. These two leads connect to the winch. And they're just tied up here, out of the way, because the manufacturer is assuming you will put on the winch later or not, but they've already ran them, which is such a nice benefit. So I undo the zip tie so that those are free, and then pull this now underneath and route it to the winch. And the perfect amount of slack is given. So now I want to take the protective coating off of these leads. So before you connect these leads, Warren sends you with these boots or grommets to go over top of them to help seal those when you're done. Simply slide it on and push back on it just a little bit further so it's exposed. Then you can bolt it on. Once your leads are tight, take your grommet and fish it back over top of that to protect. You are going to have to pull and push and stretch that just a little bit, but it will sit snug once you get it going. Now your winch cables are covered and watertight. Since the remainder of the wiring on this is going to be going through the back, I don't have anything else to do up here. I'm going to start bolting everything back up here just so it's all back together. I would first start with the ferrule. This is the best time you're gonna get to put that on. And this is one of those times where you're gonna find out what kind of dexterity you have with your fingers. Okay, now it's time for the faceplate. You may have to flex and finagle some of these to get them to align. Just don't tighten anything down until every bolt is all the way started and in a few threads. That way you're not fighting yourself. The next step is to mount the solenoid that actuates everything, and we're going to mount that to the back end of the four-wheeler by the other end of these terminals that I showed you earlier. The four-wheeler comes with this plate from the manufacturer. Now the solenoid is fully mounted and we're ready to put these brackets on, and it's all color coded along the solenoid as well. When I was looking for a new winch, I kept reading all the reviews, and everybody when they bought this winch said they didn't get enough leads. They thought that these black and red leads were meant to go all the way to the front of the four-wheeler. I recommend you read the instructions for installing this. Don't just take my word for it, but you need to realize that these leads go to the front of the four-wheeler. These ones simply go to this terminal and then to the battery terminals, and that's it. So realistically, I have too much slack, and I wish I could reduce it by a foot, but I'm not gonna redo these because they're such good crimps and everything. So I'll just have to take up the slack and feed it up through the battery right here. You will have to take apart your tack, and you're gonna feed the wire for your actuator down through your center tack, back along and behind here, kind of along this frame line, and back through to that solenoid once again. I think I'm just gonna kind of ballpark, but I am gonna leave myself a little extra slack. I can always push the extra slack back into the tack and zip tie it tight. For this panel, you have to undo a screw right here. That's just a normal 10mm screw. Comes out really, really simple. The tricky part is these little plastic rivets. If you're not delicate with them, you'll break them. So I recommend a flathead screwdriver if you have one, getting under both sides, and you need to pull it back from the washer. When you get these plastic rivets, this is what they look like. This will fit in the hole like this, and then you push the pin in and it opens that and expands it so that it gets it stuck behind there. So in order to undo it, you have to pry out that pin from the middle and then squeeze it tight and it'll pull out. So you don't necessarily have to pull it all the way out, but you can. And then once it comes, these plastic pieces fit all into itself. So here's the new wiring coming underneath the headlamp. I want to follow this wiring, and just so it has something to zip tie to, and part of this red wire that's sticking off of it, we'll use that in a minute. The rest of this we can feed along here now and easily feed it through here. I really recommend following as close to this existing wire ties as possible, because that's probably the manufacturer's safest route for your wiring to go. Our lines that run up to our switches come all the way back here to the solenoid. You have a black and a green, and they give you ample amounts of wire. They also give you two different styles of connections. One connects to the solenoid and then one connects to this wire. And my assumption is because there's a remote option available that you can come and wire in later on. Green goes to green and black goes to black. And then with all your slack, let's wind that up. And we'll zip tie that to the frame as well. Our last step, so that we have all of our power, is terminating everything to the battery. And remember, you want to do red first and then your black second. I don't know how much of this I'll be able to show, because by the time I get my hands in there, I'll be covering and you won't be able to see anything anyway. So just remember, line up all your reds. And if you did happen to have a trickle charger, don't forget to put that back on there. This back half of the four-wheeler is all the way terminated. It's all the way back together, and we're good. So I'm going to finish putting this panel back on, and then we'll finish up in the front and the mounting gear. Now, the only wiring, even though this does look like a mess, the only wiring we have left to do is this one. What's going to make all of this winch and everything work is a keyed power source. That means that when the key is on, you are getting power to that accessory. And you want it to be to a keyed power source, because if not, you go to a direct power source, it can drain your battery if it's left on or if something's just left running for some reason. So I recommend always using a keyed power source. You'll know it's one of those because you'll have a white and orange wire is always a keyed powered source. And Polaris, once again, does a great job in terminating these and having them in the areas they know you're gonna want them. One of the key power sources we used for our handlebar warmers and our thumb warmer, and they have a second one up here that's most likely for our winch. So we're just gonna terminate to that one. Now that all the wires are terminated, before I start putting everything all the way back and closing it all the way off, I really do wanna test and see if it works. Pull in. There we go. Our new winch is all the way on and functioning and working properly. I can't wait to get out and use it. This particular winch I'll leave in the description down below if you guys want to go check it out. If you guys like the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe. Thanks guys, we'll see you next time. Okay. Today, I've replaced, hey guys, and welcome back to, hey guys, I've had this four-wheeler for nearly 6 years. I've had this four-wheeler for, this is my, definitely.
The thing that goes on. Yeah.
So take a wrench and double tighten.
I got my snack and cracker.
Already existing for their. So what I need to do now is take off the cup. So now we need to protect. So now we want to take the.
I kind of a bear to get on.
Still have power. Oh, I know why. Do you want to retract that in real quick, just so it's in? Yeah.